Have you ever stopped to think about why, even when studying investments, following the news, and trying to do everything right, it seems like the best market opportunities always pass you by before you even get there, as if there's a game happening on another level, with different rules, while most people are fighting over crumbs in a noisy, competitive, and increasingly predictable environment. Perhaps you recognize this feeling. You open your brokerage app, see the same popular stocks, the same recommended funds, the same hot tips circulating everywhere. Everyone talking about the same things, reacting to the same headlines, coming and going at the same time. And, deep down, there's that silent frustration. Why does it always seem like I'm too late? Why is it that when something becomes obvious to me, it's already expensive, saturated, or lacks the same potential? The market that most people think they know is this one. A visible, exposed, noisy market. An environment where the IIU feeling of constant movement creates the illusion of progress, but where few actually build wealth consistently. And the problem isn't a lack of intelligence or effort. It's structure. It's access. It's the stage of the game. There's a layer of the market that almost no one talks about. Not because it's secret or forbidden, but because it simply doesn't appear to those still stuck in the financial survival phase. When capital is limited, the focus is immediate. Earn faster. Make fewer mistakes. Seize any opportunity that seems promising. This pushes the investor to the same place where everyone else is looking and competing. Have you ever experienced this? That feeling of always being a chaser, reacting to the market instead of acting strategically. The more people enter the market, the harder it gets. More noise, more emotion, more impulsive decisions, and, ironically, less clarity. The market seems too complex, too unpredictable, almost unfair. But what if I told you that this isn't the complete game? That there's a real market operating in parallel, quieter, less accessible at first glance, where the best opportunities lie far from the spotlight? What you're about to discover might surprise you, because it's not just about financial products, but about where you are on your wealth-building journey. This difference between the visible market and the real market isn't reflected in the charts everyone follows, nor in the sensational headlines. It begins to appear when investors stop acting out of urgency and start acting based on position. When the focus shifts from what will go up now to where it makes sense to be in the long term. Stay with me until the end, because understanding this hidden layer completely changes how you view investments, risk, and wealth growth. From here on out, the question stops being why the market always seems to be against you and becomes which side of the market you're really on. And it's precisely at this point that the game begins to change. And perhaps, as you listen to all this, something is making sense inside you, not as a ready-made answer, but as a familiar discomfort, that feeling that the problem was never a lack of effort, but rather playing on a board that doesn't favor those who haven't yet reached a certain point in their journey. If this topic touches on something you've experienced, if you've ever felt that silent frustration of always seeming to be one step behind, leave it in the comments. Share. What has struck you most so far? Because many people watching feel exactly the same way. They just haven't put it into words yet. When you comment, it's not just another number. It's a sign that this conversation matters, that this type of content needs to continue existing and reaching other people who are also trying to understand how the market really works. Similarly, if at any point in this video you thought, "This makes sense to me," liking the video is a simple way to say that, and it helps. Much more than it seems to spread this message. And if you feel that this reflection goes beyond a single isolated tip, if you want to continue exploring this other side of the market, this layer that almost no one explains calmly and in depth, subscribing to the channel is almost a natural step. The idea here is not to promise shortcuts, but to build understanding, long-term vision, and clarity in an environment that is often intentionally confusing. Your participation here is what makes this channel grow and create a community of people who are on the same path of construction. Now, hold that thought for a moment, because from here on out, the conversation gets even more interesting. There's a clear difference between simply being in the market and actually holding a position within it. And that's exactly what we're going to start revealing in the next part. Now I want to delve even deeper into this subject, because this is exactly where a lot of things start to fall into place. There's a point where the market stops seeming like random chaos and begins to reveal its own logic. It's not something that happens overnight, nor does it emerge as a grand, dramatic revelation. It's more subtle than that. Gradually, you realize there's a layer to the market that almost never appears in everyday conversations, headlines, or popular recommendations. This hidden layer isn't made of secret tricks or forbidden information. It's not a conspiracy. It's structure. It's how the system was designed to work. The visible market, the one everyone sees, is the most accessible, the most talked about, and therefore the most competitive. The hidden layer, however, is silent. It demands time, consistency, and a different kind of mindset. It's not enough to want to enter. You have to be ready to stay. When we talk about this less visible aspect, we're talking about opportunities that are less publicized, less competitive, and, most importantly, operate under different rules. Rules that don't make sense for those still focused only on trading small amounts of capital or reacting to short-term movements. Certain types of assets, trades, and access points simply don't present themselves to those who haven't yet reached a certain point in their wealth-building journey. Not because anyone is hiding them, but because before that point, they wouldn't be viable, either emotionally or strategically. Here's a hidden truth that almost no one likes to admit. The market changes as you change. As your wealth grows, so does your responsibility, the patience required, and the impact of your decisions. Beyond a certain point, making mistakes is more costly, but getting it right also has much deeper effects. That's why the game starts to select not only those who have capital, but those who have developed enough maturity to manage it. This is a silent transformation. The mindset shifts from immediate gratification to positional focus. Investors begin to see behind the scenes, aspects that previously seemed invisible. Conversations change. Time becomes an ally, not an enemy. Risk ceases to be something that causes constant anxiety and becomes something calculated, integrated into the strategy. It's as if the market reveals a new level, where fewer people circulate, but where decisions have a much greater impact on wealth building over the years. And that explains why so many people feel they're always looking in the wrong place. It's not a lack of ability, it's being in a phase where access is still limited by the journey itself. The hidden layer doesn't reward haste, but consistency. It doesn't react to emotion, but to clarity. And, little by little, it begins to reveal itself to those who stop looking for shortcuts and accept playing the game as it really is. If everything we're talking about is starting to make sense to you, leave a comment below. I'm on this journey too, because from this point on, understanding how this layer reveals itself completely changes the way you approach the market and the decisions you'll make in the future. Now I want to delve even deeper into this subject, because this is where many people get confused, thinking we're just talking about a cold number. When you talk about 250K, the first reaction is usually financial. More money, more possibilities, more security. But the hidden truth is that this turning point has much less to do with the value itself, and much more to do with everything that was necessary to get there. The 250K doesn't appear by chance. It's the consequence of a journey marked by difficult decisions, corrected mistakes, emotional control, and above all, surviving the investor you were at the beginning. Up to this point, most people are in survival mode. Every market fluctuation feels like a personal attack. Every drop generates anxiety. Every rise awakens greed. The investor reacts more than acts. They live in intense emotional cycles, jumping from strategy to strategy, trying to find something that works quickly enough to relieve the pressure. This period is confusing, noisy, and exhausting, and many people give up right there, not for lack of ability, but for mental exhaustion. Reaching 250K means having crossed that desert. It means you managed to maintain consistency even when the market tested your patience. That you learned, often the hard way, that emotion is costly, that impulsive decisions leave scars, that discipline isn't exciting, but it's transformative. This wealth carries an invisible history of self-control, course corrections, and maturation. That's why, at this point, something changes inside before it changes outside. Mental clarity begins to replace urgency. The investor stops asking how to earn faster and starts asking how not to destroy what I'm building. This change in mindset is silent, but powerful. The focus shifts from the short term to strategy. Time ceases to be an enemy and becomes a tool. Decisions become less emotional and more structured, because now there is something to protect. Something that took years to build. This is the true impact of reaching 250K. It's not about status, comparison, or vanity. It's about attitude. It's when the game starts to make sense because you've already experienced firsthand the cost of making mistakes and the value of maintaining a clear direction. From then on, the market is seen in a different light. The behind-the-scenes aspects become more visible, opportunities are evaluated more calmly, and patience no longer seems like a waste of time. The transformation isn't external, it's internal, and it completely changes how you position yourself in relation to risk, growth, and future choices. If what we're talking about reflects something from your own experience or the path you feel you're building, comment below. That makes sense to me, because from that point on, the conversation begins to delve into an even deeper level about what is truly revealed after that turning point. Now, I want to delve even deeper into this subject because it's precisely after the shock gate that many things begin to change in a way that's almost imperceptible to those on the outside. There's no announcement, no visible milestone, no feeling of "I've arrived." What comes first is silence. A strange silence for those who have spent years in the noisy market, full of opinions, warnings, urgencies, and raw emotions. Suddenly, the noise diminishes. Fewer stimuli, less haste, less need to react to everything. And this silence is not empty. It is full of impact. It is in this silence that better conditions begin to appear. Not in a magical sense, but structurally. Negotiations become more flexible. Deadlines are discussed more rationally. Risks are assessed coldly. The market stops shouting and starts talking. And those who have crossed that threshold quickly learn that speaking softly in this environment is an advantage. Another important revelation is the type of people who are starting to appear along the way. Fewer stage experts and more people who have built something real, often far from the spotlight. People who don't need to prove anything, don't sell promises, and don't talk about shortcuts. These are shorter, more in-depth conversations, full of behind-the-scenes stories and real experiences. Here, the exchange ceases to be about isolated opportunities and becomes about vision, processes, and decisions that accumulate over time. Opportunities also change. In nature, they begin to demand patience, context analysis, and a mindset that accepts waiting. There is no rush, because there is no desperation. These are moves planned for the long term, where the return doesn't come quickly, but when it does, it comes consistently. It is at this point that many people realize a hidden truth. The best opportunities rarely seem exciting at the beginning. They seem quiet, too simple, even boring for those who are still seeking excitement in the market. This transformation is profound because it changes how the investor sees themselves within the game. A different sense of belonging emerges, not based on status, but on attitude. You begin to understand that you don't need to be involved in everything. You don't need to have an opinion on everything. You don't need to chase after every move. The focus shifts from the quantity of decisions to the quality. Fewer moves, more impact, less anxiety, more clarity. From this perspective, the market appears smaller in volume, but much greater in depth. Decisions gain weight because they are made intentionally. The journey ceases to be reactive and becomes consciously constructed. It's as if you had access to a quieter floor of the same building, where fewer people circulate, but where every step matters much more. If this perspective resonates with something you feel, or with the type of investor you're becoming, comment below. I'm on this journey too. Because from this point on, understanding how to position yourself in this silent environment completely changes the way you view the upcoming choices that begin to present themselves. Now I want to delve even deeper into this subject because everything said so far loses its power if it remains just a distant idea, something that will only make sense when I get there someday. The truth is that crossing the shark gate begins long before the number appears on the bill. It starts with how you think today, with the small, repeated, and almost invisible decisions that build or sabotage this journey over time. Thinking like someone who is still on their way has nothing to do with pretending you've already arrived. On the contrary, it has to do with accepting the current stage without resentment, without haste, and without fantasy. It's about abandoning the logic of skipping steps and accepting that accumulation is a process, not an event. Those who consistently build wealth understand that real progress is rarely exciting. It's silent, predictable, and often even boring. But that's precisely where the impact lies. This mindset changes the relationship with the market and, above all, with oneself. The focus shifts from proving something to others to building something for the future. Decisions become less impulsive because they are not guided by momentary emotion, comparison, or fear of being left out. There is more respect for time, more care with risk, and more clarity about what really matters on the journey. Each choice begins to carry an intention, not just a reaction. Another essential point is emotional control, not in the sense of becoming cold or indifferent, but of recognizing internal patterns. Those who are yet to get there learn to observe their own decisions as one observes the market, with curiosity, honesty, and responsibility. They learn that making mistakes is part of the process, but repeating the same mistake impulsively is costly. They learn that doing nothing, at many times, is a strategic decision. This internal transformation is what prepares the investor to handle larger volumes, greater responsibilities, and more profound consequences. There's also a shift in identity. Gradually, you stop seeing yourself as someone trying to invest and start seeing yourself as someone who builds wealth. This difference seems subtle, but it changes everything. The horizon lengthens, expectations adjust, and anxiety decreases. The market ceases to be a place for gambling and becomes an environment for positioning. It's not about always being right, but about remaining consistent enough so that time does the hard work. Thinking this way today creates a solid foundation for when conditions change. Because when capital grows, it amplifies who you already are. If there was discipline before, it is strengthened. If there was a lack of control, it becomes more dangerous. Therefore, true preparation happens now, in the choices that almost no one sees, behind the scenes of one's own financial life. It is this alignment between mindset, decisions, and patience that makes it natural to walk through that door when it finally presents itself. If this way of looking at the journey resonates with where you are right now, or the investor you are becoming, comment below. That makes sense to me, because from that point on, the conversation begins to touch on something even deeper about how to sustain that growth when the game really changes. If you've made it this far, it's because this conversation has truly stayed with you until the end. And when that happens, it's usually not just about investing, it's about clarity, about seeing the game more calmly and with less noise. If any part of this video felt like it was said at exactly the right moment, let us know in the comments with the phrase, "This message was for me. I read them," and that really helps keep this kind of content alive around here. If at any point you felt that the way we talk about the market here is different from what you usually see elsewhere, a like is a simple way to reinforce that connection. It shows that this type of approach, more in-depth and less focused on immediate results, makes sense to you too. And if you want to continue exploring this side of the market, this layer that almost never comes up in casual conversations, subscribing to the channel is a natural step. The idea here is to continue delving deeper, calmly, clearly, and consistently, always connecting mindset, decisions, and building real wealth. There's a video over here that perfectly complements this topic. Click on it and continue watching it with me.